Hey, I'm Dr. Arthur Bradley, and today I'm going to do a video on an AR15 build. We're right in the middle of this coronavirus outbreak, and everybody's cooped up at home, including myself. So what I did is I did a bit of homework. I'm fairly familiar with AR-15s. I have several of them, and of course was in the Army, so I handled the M16 quite a bit. But I'm not an expert, so people can certainly offer some opinions and suggestions as I do the video. You know, I'm always open to new ideas. But what I did is I did a bunch of homework on components that might go together into sort of like an optimal AR-15 build, if there is such a thing. And I wrote a lot of the companies to see if they might want to donate to the build. Some did, some didn't. And so the parts that I didn't get donated, I bought myself, and we're going to put it all together into this build. So I didn't compromise on anything, but I didn't go like super extreme and just throw money at this build for no reason. Everything I tried to buy was sort of what I thought at a good, reasonable, sweet spot for the components. All right, so I've got it all laid out here on my workbench, and I'm going to take my time. I'm not going to try and rush this in an afternoon and get it built. I'm going to take my time and build it up. I'll show you the components that I selected and why. And as I put them together, I'll tell you how things work. Maybe they go great, or maybe I have some problems, and I'll share those with you. All right, so stay tuned. I'm going to sort of walk you through some of the different aspects of this AR-15 build. All right, so let's start with the barrel. I did quite a bit of research on barrels, and I ended up selecting a Ballistic Advantage barrel. This is their 14.5-inch Hanson barrel, and it's in their Premium Black series. Now, I will tell you, it's a really fantastic looking barrel. The machining is just top notch all the way around. I don't think I've ever had a barrel that was any nicer than this one, to be honest. And so I wrote them and asked them if they would want to be part of the build. I was really surprised, frankly, when they wrote back and said they did. They wanted to be a part of it. So they actually donated this assembly to me, and so I want to give them a big shout out to Ballistic Advantage. I think that was really great of them to do that. So what I've got here are the pieces that they contributed to the build. They were all by my selection. This is the 14.5-inch Hanson barrel in the Premium Black series. They also contributed the flash suppressor, which is a VG6 Precision 5.56 flash suppressor, which I've never shot a barrel that had one on it, but I did a number of reviews, I read all kinds of reviews on it, and they're apparently outstanding flash suppressors. They sort of do the function of both a compensator with the large holes on the side to vent the gas, as well as do some flash hiding capability. So there's kind of a mix product, which I really like the idea of that. And then they also donated a Melnite gas tube, which I don't show on here, and a Superlative Arms gas block, adjustable gas block, which you can see right here. So all in all, you know, it's just a really nice setup. We've got the very high quality adjustable gas block. We've got the 14.5-inch barrel, and we've got this flash suppressor at the end of it, and it's really nice. And this piece here, of course, is the nut that goes on for the handguard to attach the barrel. Okay, so in terms of the upper and lower receiver, again, I read about a whole bunch of different types of receivers, and I'm not sure there's a tremendous difference between them. You look for the features you want a good quality product. Obviously, there's probably a lot of crap out there, but there's also a number of good products. I sort of splurged. I went and I got a Zev Technologies receiver. I did both the upper and lower so they would match. And it's a billet one, which means that it was actually machined out of a single piece of aluminum, and rather than you know, sort of poured and formed. This was machined out of a single piece of aluminum, and it's really, I mean, it's just beautiful to hold and touch. It's extremely well finished. I can't say enough about how nice this is. Now, they didn't donate. I did write them, and they didn't donate to this, but nevertheless, you know, I was going to pick the products that I thought were best anyway, and so this is the one that I wanted. This is their AR-15 billet set. I wanted to get the upper and lower from the same company, just so that they would guarantee fit together very well. Sometimes you can get slight differences between different companies, and you'll end up with a little wiggle or something in the product that you don't like, or maybe an alignment issue. These are machined from, of course, a solid billet aluminum. It's 7075 T651. They're hard coat anodized like a lot of receiver sets are. And you know, they have the features I wanted. It had a Picatinny rail here on the top. Had sort of the enlarged trigger guard, the flared magwell. It was, you know, all in all, just the things I wanted. This is it has both an ambidextrous safety and an ambidextrous mag release, which is kind of nice. I mean, I guess if you could configure it for left or right operation. Now I'm right-handed, so I didn't necessarily need that, but it just seemed like a feature that didn't hurt anything. And if one day the weapon were to pass on to somebody else, it might be a feature they could take advantage of. Okay, so when you select the barrel, especially if you're going to pin a compensator on it like I did, you know, I've got this barrel from Ballistic Advantage, and I had it's a 14.5-inch barrel, so you have to permanently attach the muzzle device. And what I did is I had this Epsilon VG6 compensator slash flash suppressor pinned onto it. And I had that pinned by AGCO, okay? And everybody who builds rifles probably knows about AGCO. They do fantastic work, very reasonably priced. I think it's like $50, and they pinned the flash suppressor for me, and they put on my adjustable gas block for me, which was really nice. Now you do have to send it all to them, and you also have to send your barrel nut. And the barrel nut, of course, comes with whatever handguard you're going to get, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So anyway, I just wanted to make a point to mention AGCO. They didn't contribute anything. I paid them for the work, which was just fine. Again, I think it's a very good deal. They provide a great service to anyone who's trying to build up a rifle like this. So anyway, this is the barrel nut that comes with the handguard I'll talk about next, and that is the Aero Precision Atlas S1. It's very highly reviewed, and I hadn't used one before. I've had a number of different kind of handguards. This is a really nice handguard. It's M-lock, which is just the type of hole pattern that's on it so that you can attach things to it. And I like the M-lock. Seems to be things are moving in that direction now. You certainly can find anything you need with an M-lock attachment. And so again, this is the Aero Precision AR15 Atlas S1. It's not terribly expensive, which I kind of liked. I mean, if a handguard is comfortable to you, in my opinion, and it has the features you want, that's what matters. No reason to pay another $100 for something that you're really not going to get any benefit out of. Now, this particular handguard I really like because it removes the Picatinny rail in the middle for weight savings, but it also makes it easier, more comfortable to get a good grip on that. Now, I know everybody has lots of different grips and different attachments and so forth people like. I tend to prefer to grab hold of the handguard when I'm firing, wrapping my thumb around it and holding it. So I like a nice smooth surface here that I can grab hold of. So anyway, this just really had all of the features I want, plus the reviews were really great on it. They said it's easy to mount and attach, and we'll find out here in just a minute if that's true. All right, so again, this is the Aero Precision handguard. All right, so now it's time to go ahead and take our barrel assembly and attach it to the upper portion of the receiver. And to do that, what I do is, the way I always learn to do it is you use some anti-seize compound. This is just some Loctite anti-seize compound. And you put it around the threads, put it on the threads going around the upper receiver here. And the idea of this is just to keep it from sort of locking up and seizing where you can't ever get the thing back off. So I like to go ahead and put a good bit of it around it. There's probably plenty of other materials and compounds people have used for this same general purpose. All right, but that's the idea. You start with that, and then you attach the barrel assembly. But there's of course the alignment pin there. You're gonna seat this in. Now this is expected to be nice and tight because it's a very high quality billeted receiver. So I expect to have to give this a pretty good push to get this in here and lined up. And I'll go ahead and zoom the video in so you can see how I go ahead and tighten the barrel onto the receiver. Okay, so I've gone ahead and attached the barrel to the upper receiver, and it required a few steps, and there was a little bit of difficulty with it. And the most difficult part was inserting the barrel into the upper receiver and aligning the index pin. And the reason is that these billeted receivers are sometimes just really tight tolerance, and so it ends up being really snug. And so you have to put some kind of a grease or compound around the end of the barrel there so that you can insert it. I use some of this Milcom lubricant here and put it around the end of the barrel, and then I tapped to get these two together. And then I applied the barrel nut first by hand tight. And the way I always learned it was you tighten it first hand tight, then you back it all the way off, and you tighten it to 30 foot-pounds, and you back it all the way off. You repeat the 30 foot-pounds twice more, backing it off each time. And then at the end, you tighten it all the way to whatever the spec is. In my case, I'm tightening it to 50 foot-pounds. So I've gone through those steps. I've hand tightened, and then I did 3 different times of tightening and untightening to 30 foot-pounds. And then I've tightened it to 50 foot-pounds. And so it's all put together. It's certainly very stiff and sturdy. So now it's time to go ahead and install the gas tube. The gas tube is going to install like so, where the flat end goes into the upper receiver, then it slopes down, and the other end that has the hole in it is going to go into the gas block, and that hole of course has to line up with the hole in the barrel. There's also two other small holes which will line up with these holes on the side of this gas block, which you then tap a pin through to hold the gas block in place. Okay, now they always say before you install the gas tube you should blow through it just to make sure that it's not clogged up, so I'll go ahead and do that. And then otherwise it's pretty easy to do. You just slide it in there again, and then you slide it on this end where again we're trying to line up these holes with the holes here. So I'll go ahead and install that and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so I've gone ahead and finished installing the gas tube. I aligned the gas block properly, got everything nice and straight with the top of the receiver, and then I put a little bit of blue thread locker, Loctite thread locker on the threaded inserts that go in the bottom of the gas block, and then secured those down tight. So everything's put together and looks fine. Now we'll go ahead and go on to the next step. Well, I ran into my first significant problem when I went to install my handguard. So the Aero Precision handguard, this is the S1, apparently is not compatible with some of the billeted receivers, and I didn't know that at the time when I bought it. And so what happened was it wouldn't fully seat on the receiver. It hit a small extension that was on the receiver that apparently was not on an Aero Precision receiver. So what I ended up having to do, I mean, the options were sort of dire and worse. One is you can completely decide to use a different handguard, which is an option, but you know, you've already built up the barrel at that point, and you'd have to change the barrel nut likely, and to do that you have to then remove the flash suppressor first, take off the gas block, you know, and so all of that means repinning and taking things off, which is a big mess. I'd have to send the barrel off to have that done. So anyway, what I decided to do was see if I could just machine the handguard a small amount to get it to fit. And luckily it's aluminum, which is pretty easy to machine. So I just took a Dremel tool, and I don't know if you can even see it on the video, but I cut a very small rectangular notch here on the end of the handguard so that it would fully seat against the receiver. Now hopefully that's the only issue I'm going to have in terms of when I build this up. In terms of this handguard, hopefully it won't interfere with anything else, like let's say with the lower or anything like that. But we'll see. But anyway, I'm satisfied with the solution. You can't really tell it was done. It almost looks like it was part of the handguard to start with. But I will say, if you were building this up from scratch, you would not want to select the Aero Precision handguard for this particular build. Not with the Zev receivers. These billeted receivers apparently don't work very well with those. So that would be something I would do different. Now I really like the handguard for the reasons I mentioned, and so I think I'll be satisfied with it. But there's no reason why you should have to go to the trouble to machine the handguard to get it to fit. All right, so that was the first trouble I got into here, first significant real challenge. Okay, so I've gone ahead and installed the dust cover. In this case, I went with a Strike Industries Ultimate dust cover. They're a polymer dust cover. They come as a single assembly. So the spring is already done for you. All you have to do is insert one pin here and then compress this one and snap it in. It takes about 5 seconds to put on. It's really nice and easy. It has a nice solid closure, holds shut. I like that. And it's a couple dollars more than an aluminum dust cover, but I just like the feel of it. It seems well made. And this one has a little American flag on it, which I like as well. So that takes us to the forward assist. Now I went ahead and started the forward assist. I got a Strike Industries forward assist. Now they didn't contribute these, I just bought these. I just like the Strike Industries parts. This one is just the sort of the standard hex head type. They do make another one with little sharp ridges around the outside. I'm not sure why they did that. The idea of hitting something with the palm of your hand that has sharp ridges on it just doesn't seem like a good idea to me. Anyway, I went with this nice flat one here. And what you do is you push it all the way in. You make sure that the little hook that's on the forward assist is facing toward the bolt carrier group. And you can use a little punch to, once you fully compress it, you can put the punch in to just sort of hold it in place. And then you can tap in the roll pin here to get it to seat. And that will take that and hold that in nice and solid. All right. So I'll go ahead and finish this part up. Okay, now that we've got the dust cover put on and the forward assist put on, we're going to go ahead and put in the bolt carrier group. And this is one by ToolCraft. I sort of splurged a little bit and picked one that was nickel boron coated, just really pretty and smooth. It's extremely well machined, much nicer than some of the other ones I have in some other AR-15s. And so it came as a complete bolt carrier group. It's got the firing pin and everything in it. Really nice. And so we'll put in the bolt carrier group, and we'll also put in the charging handle. This is a Radian Raptor LT, which is one of their lighter weight ones. Really nice charging handles. And I like a charging handle with a good size grip to it, rather than the sort of teeny tiny ones. So both of these items were contributed by Spicetac.com. And if you've never been to Spicetac, then you're missing out. I go there often. They have a lot of AR-15 parts there, a lot of firearm parts in general. And usually they tend toward the really cool, interesting things like this ToolCraft bolt carrier group and the Raptor charging handle. So anyway, a big shout out to them. I really appreciate them contributing these parts to the build. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put these in. Of course, there's not much to that. I'll just lay the charging handle in, and I'll set the bolt carrier group in, and I'll show you when it's finished. Okay, so I've just placed the charging handle in, and I thought I'd make one more comment. So I'm getting ready to put in the bolt carrier group here, and I like to take just a little bit of lubricant. Again, I'm just using this Milcom lubricant here, and just put a very light coating of it around the bolt carrier group. You don't have to do that. When I was in the Army, we certainly didn't do that. But it just seems like it helps it cycle a little bit better. So anyway, I do that whenever I put it in, and there you go. And so really nice. The upper now is fully assembled, with the exception of any kind of optics or something that we'd want to put on the top. And I actually got a pretty cool optic that I'm going to put on by Aimpoint at the end. But for now, our upper's complete. We've got our forward assist, our dust cover, we've got our handguard on, we've got the gas block and the gas block tube, of course, and then we've got the this flash suppressor that I talked about earlier. All right, so that's done. So of the two, I think the upper is typically easier than the lower. You don't have to deal with the trigger and other things like that and little springs and stuff. But so I wanted to start with that first and get it done. And again, I think everything went nice and smooth. I'm very happy with the components. The feel of it is really nice. Like I said, the barrel is just top notch. I think that Ballistic Advantage just has some of the best barrels in the business. And the handguard, again, I really like the feel of it. I hate to fault Aero Precision. I know they make a lot of great products and at very reasonably priced. It was my fault really that I didn't look close enough, that it wasn't really compatible with my billeted receiver here, okay? But I ended up making it work. I don't think anybody would ever know the difference if they looked at it. And so I'm gonna keep that. This is the way I'm gonna configure it and run it, okay? All right, so next we'll move on to the lower, and we'll just go one piece at a time. Okay, so we're ready to start building the lower portion of the AR-15. And so I start with my Zev Technologies lower receiver here. And again, there may be some fit issues. It seems like some of these billeted receivers have some issues in terms of their fit. We'll see how this all plays out. But what I did is I bought a lower parts kit. I bought one of the Strike Industries lower parts kit. I've just sort of put it in this magnetic tray here. Now, one thing I don't like about the kit right off the bat is everything comes just sort of lumped in these three little plastic bags. And if you've never built a lower receiver up before, you'd be confused about what springs are for what. And they don't bin them in individual bags, which some companies do. So that'd be one suggestion I'd have for them, is if you're going to sell a product like this with so many little pieces, that you bin them up in a way and maybe put little labels on them. But I know which parts go for which, and so I'm going to be able to make sense of it and build this up. But anyway, I kind of binned them up. We're gonna start. We could start at either end or any part in the middle here. I think we're going to go ahead and start with the pivot pin, and sometimes that can be pretty tricky, just because there's a little spring that has to go in, and you know, you have to get it compressed in there before you get the pin in. It's real easy to shoot the pin and the detent out accidentally. All right, so we'll have to be careful with that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install the pivot pin. The idea is pretty simple. There's a little pivot pin spring that's going to go down in this hole here, and then there's this little, looks like a little plunger looking piece with a thin end and a fatter end. The thin end goes into the spring, and the fatter end is what's going to, this is called the detent, the pivot pin detent, and the fatter end is going to lock into this channel that's on the bottom, the underside of this pin. So when the pin is inserted, you can pull it back out and it'll catch because that little detent will catch in this channel and it will, you know, not pull all the way out and shoot the detent out. And so it's a capture mechanism for this pin. So what we want to do then is ideally we could just compress this spring and slide this pin in, but it's difficult to do that without making a mistake and shooting the spring and detent out into the room. So there's a number of, like I said, there's some special purpose products. Unfortunately, this one doesn't work. The one by Real Avid doesn't work on this particular receiver. And so most of the time you just do it with a punch, and you come in from the back side and you hold it down, and then you sort of push the punch and the pin together and go through until you get it locked into this channel. That's kind of the idea. All right, so I'll go ahead and try that, and I'll capture it in video so you can see how it's done. Okay, so this shows the punch fully inserted, and the detent and the spring are now compressed in there. And so now the trick is we're gonna follow the punch through with this pin, and then we'll rotate it and lock it into place to have the detent latch into this little groove. Okay. So let me go ahead and give that a try here. And I'll turn the receiver toward the wall here in case something happens and it shoots out. I'll at least have a fighting chance of finding it on the table here. So you can see I managed to go ahead and insert the pin by just pushing out the punch. And once it's locked in here, that detent actually, you can't see it on the video, but it locks into that groove. And so now this thing can come and lock in, and you can pull it back out, but it won't come all the way out. That detent will spring up in there and prevent it from pulling out. Okay, so successful. Looks pretty good. That little Strike Industries pivot pin's got a different shape than some of them, but it fits really nice on this, and it seemed to go in without any trouble. All right, next I'm going to install the magazine release. You're just going to put the magazine catch through here, and then this large spring goes here, and then there's a smaller piece that you have to push down the spring. You have to compress the spring and get it started on the threads, and that can be a little bit tricky. So you don't have to get it very far, but you got to get it going. So like so. And once it's started, you don't have to continue to screw from this side. You'll eventually get where you start interfering with the receiver. So you can push the button through, get it lined up and push it through, and then you can do you can tighten it up on this side here, okay? All right, eventually you'll get where you can't go any further, and that's where it would install at. And you can see on the other side here, it's got a nice magazine release here. Seems to work great, okay? All right, so that's done. Next we'll go to the bolt catch. Okay, now that we've got our pivot pin installed, we're going to move next to the bolt catch release. And this Zev Technologies lower receiver comes with the other side. It's an ambi bolt catch release system. This side's already installed. It's not like a mil-spec thing. It's their own design. And so what we have to do really is just use the bolt catch release that comes with our lower parts kit, along with the spring that comes with it, and then a couple of specialty parts that come with this receiver. There's a little screw that's going to ultimately hold it in place, and there's a little plunger-like thing that's going to go in into the spring and then go in and hold, provide it sort of some springing action as we do the bolt catch release. So I'll just go ahead and put that together. It's pretty straightforward. Hopefully maybe we can catch it on video here. Maybe I'll zoom in just a little bit here. All right, so we just start by taking this little plunger and putting the spring on, and that goes down in the hole there. And then we put our bolt catch release. This one's from Strike Industries. And you compress the spring and plunger, and then you put in this little keeper part here that's done with a 1/16 inch. Okay, so there, it's installed. You have to play with it just a little bit and get the right compression while you're screwing that in, but it went in just fine and seems to be working fine. So there you go. That's the bolt catch release installation. Okay, so next we're going to install the trigger and the ambidextrous safety. And before we do that, I want to give a big shout out to Timney Triggers. They were kind enough to contribute a 4.5 pound competition trigger to this build. And if you've never worked with Timney Triggers before, do yourself a favor and check them out. They're just really fantastic triggers. They sell them in these fully integrated modules, very tightly machined. Just really a pleasure to work with. And they have a great brake to them. This one is a 4.5 pound brake. So I think it'll be perfect for this build. All right, now I'm going to talk about some details about why you have to do these two together next. Now it's important to install the trigger and the ambi safety at the same time. And the reason is if you've just installed the trigger and you fully tighten it down the way you need to do, you may end up with interference with the barrel of the safety when you try and insert it. You may end up with some interference issues. Likewise, if you insert the safety first, you won't be able to seat the trigger. So what you have to do is partially install the trigger, then insert the safety, and then fully secure the trigger. All right, that's the order you'd want to do it in. And in general, installing the trigger is very simple, but the very last step of it can give people a fit. And I just want to talk about what that step is and how you might be able to accomplish it. All right, so to install the Timney trigger, all you really do is put it in the channel, take the two pins, line up the holes here, take the two pins. Again, they just push right in. They're very loose at this point. No tools needed, just hold it in place. That gets the trigger in the general location. All right, now you're still going to have to tighten it up. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and install our ambi safety. And that's easy enough to do. It just has a barrel in the two ends here. You're going to put screws to hold the ends on. I use a little bit of blue Loctite on these threaded screws, just so that they won't back out over time. And just give them a little bit. And so what you do, quite simply, is just insert the safety through the hole, use a little Allen wrench here, and secure the other side. Okay, so once the safety is installed, it should spin freely without any interference. So easy enough to put the safety in, and now it's time to secure the trigger. Right now the trigger is loose in here, and it's a two-step process. There are two screws down in these little holes, one on each side of the internals of the trigger here, and you have to take an Allen wrench down into those holes and tighten up some set screws, and that secures it to the bottom. Essentially, it presses it off of the bottom of the receiver and gets it nice and tight in this channel. So that's the first step. The difficulty is there are these little bitty spring arms that go right across the front of those holes, and so you have to push the spring out of the way to be able to get your Allen wrench down in that hole. Now this first step doesn't usually give people much trouble. I'll go ahead and secure those, and then I'll talk about the next step. Okay, so the first step is done. I've gone in and tightened down those two screws. And the way I do it is I use a small flathead screwdriver to move the leg of the spring out of the way, enough where you can get the Allen wrench down in the hole and tighten those up. And by doing that, the trigger's now set. It's not going to go anywhere. But with that said, what they do is they send two very small set screws, and I'll zoom in a minute so you can see them, that go on top of those existing screws that are already down in there. And so it sort of screws in on top of them to keep them from ever backing out due to vibration. And I think that's a great idea. It's a very secure mounting system for sure. But the trick is getting these little set screws past those spring legs, and that has given people fits over the years. I saw lots of posts of people very frustrated with it. I'll show you how I do it. Maybe that will help others as they try and install these Timney triggers. Okay, so I've gone ahead and tightened those down. It doesn't look any different, but the set screws are now down inside these holes here. And it took me, I don't know, about 5 minutes or so to put them both in. And again, what I did is I used the screwdriver here to just move the legs of the springs around. And by doing that, I was able to get the holes open enough that you can insert the set screws down in there. And there's a couple of things, little tricks here I'll just point out. One is that if the Allen wrench that they send is a little short, it might help to have a little longer Allen wrench. And if the set screw keeps falling off your Allen wrench, what I found is if you work more vertically on it, where it doesn't fall off into it, it's a little less frustrating as opposed to working horizontally like this. Now, if the little set screw sticks to the Allen wrench nice and tight, you can work like this and it works fine. That's the way I did it the first time. But the second time it was a little looser. It kept falling off my Allen wrench, and so I had to work kind of vertically to get it in here and get it secured. But I got it done. Again, I really love the Timney triggers. I do think that installation is a little tricky, and I can see why people get frustrated by it. But again, if I can do it, anybody can do it. You want to just take your time, think about what you're doing, and just be careful with your, inserting it in there and threading it in. And so the Timney trigger is fully installed, the safety's installed, and now what we're going to do is put on the grip, which of course has the little spring that'll go in here and tighten everything up. Okay, now that we've got the safety and the trigger installed, we're going to put on our grip next. Now, I like these ERGO tactical grips. They're just really feel great in the hand. So that's the one I'm going to install. And basically what you need is you need the bolt that goes in the bottom of the grip. And then you need the detent spring and the detent that comes with the lower parts kit. So the way to do this is to first put in the detent. It goes pointed end down. And that goes in here right below the safety. And then you put the detent spring in the grip itself, and you can feed the bolt through here as well, and then we're going to line it all up and tighten it down. So I'll go ahead and do that and show you what it comes out like. Now when you push the grip on, you want to make sure that you compress the spring, but you don't get it like poked out and bulged out in some ways. You want to sort of get it in there nice and seated, all right? And it'll push in there. And then you just tighten down the bolt, and you're good to go. And with the addition of the detent, the spring and the detent, then your safety will start to work properly. We'll see that in just a minute here. Okay, so now we've got our safety. Now I set this one up to be 60 degrees. I changed my mind after saying I was going to do a 90. I just thought, well, I had never tried a 60 before, and it's a little quicker than a full 90 would be. And I don't know, I'll have to see if I like it or not. It's easy enough to change. You can just swap out the relative position of these levers here on the barrel, but it takes a little bit of work, but not too bad. And I don't know, I just kind of like the feel of that. Seems pretty good. Anyway, the safety seems to work fine, and I'll run you through a safety check next just to make sure that it's functioning properly before we finish up the lower receiver. Okay, so we'll just run a quick functional check on the trigger and safety selector. So first on safe, won't fire, go to fire, release the hammer. Again, don't let it slam into the front of the receiver there. And then with the trigger still pressed, you reset the hammer, make sure to lock back, and then let go of the trigger, and you should hear a click, which you do. And then again, you should be able to fire, which you can. So seems to work properly. So now on to the next step, which would be installing the buffer tube and the buttstock. Okay, next we're going to go on to installing the stock and the buffer tube, and we're going to install the buffer retainer and spring, and then the detent and spring, and finally the rear takedown pin. So we're going to do all that together here as we put on the stock, all right? So the very first step, I have to work with this stock just a little bit to get it ready. This one is by Zuth-AR. It's the MBA1, I believe is the number of it. I have one of these on another rifle, and I just really like the way it's very comfortable to use. I just really like the way it feels. So I'm going to go ahead and use it on this one. So to do that first, if you're familiar with these, you have to first take off this little rubber butt pad at the end. They actually give you a little Allen wrench that's built into the stock, which is kind of nice of them. I'm using my own rather than pull it off of the stock, but there is one on the side of the stock. It's right over here on the side wall. But we take off this little rubber part. All right, that just comes off. It just pulls off here. And it gives us access to the hole that we need to there we go, to mount it, which is going to be right in here. All right, so once you take that off, pull this out just a little bit here. There we go. All right, like so. So that would be our first step. We're going to go ahead and install the buffer retainer and the spring, which is going to go in here, of course, right in here. All right, and the idea of this, of course, is we've got to get this compressed with the buffer tube when it's fully inserted, so that the buffer spring won't come out. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put that in there. Then we're going to install the buffer tube. Now I'm using a Zuth-AR rifle length tube. Some people use the shorter carbine type tubes, but I'm using this one, which goes well with that particular stock. So you get this going. Okay, so and then we hold this part down and we screw this in enough that it catches, all right? And so if you do it right, you know, the buttstock will go tight and it'll butt up against this but not go over the nub of it, all right? And then normally you'd take an armorer's wrench and you'd tighten the buttstock here. I don't have an armorer's wrench, so I'm just going to use a regular wrench to tighten it up. All right. So there you go. So that part's in. All right, so once we get it taken, tightened up, we're going to go ahead and insert the rear takedown pin. Goes in from the right side, like so. And then we have to put in the rear takedown detent and takedown spring, which are these two here. All right, and they have to go right in here. And so you put the detent in, and then the spring, the detent spring in, like so, okay? Now it's really easy to crush this spring and get it bent when you're putting your stock on, so you have to be careful about that. But next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our stock and we're going to slide it on. Okay, so once you get that nice and snug there, you're going to attach the butt stock itself. In this case, there's a single screw that goes at the back, and it's just a flathead screw. We'll just go ahead and screw that in here. I got that nice and tight. All right, so now the butt stock is on. So next we're going to snap back on that rubber butt plate here, and it just snaps on, and then we're going to put back in the 2 screws, right? So I'll go ahead and snap that on. I'll put in the 2 screws and show you what it looks like when we get all done. Okay, so we've got the butt stock attached. Everything came together just fine. So now the next step is to put in the buffer spring and buffer tube. I went ahead and splurged, and I got the JP Enterprises Silent Capture buffer spring, which is just really a nice product. It's supposed to help the operation of the weapon, as well as take away some of the sort of a weird, sort of a metallic sound that you get when you shoot an AR-15, if you know what I'm talking about. It's kind of like a loose metal sound almost. This takes that away. It gives it a much quieter operation. And all in all, it's just an improvement just over the conventional buffer tube. So I do want to thank JP Enterprises. They actually contributed this spring to the build, so I want to thank them for that. I'm really eager to get out and try it. Now, since this was a rifle length buffer tube, you have to use a little extension that comes with this. This is sort of for carbine length. And so that goes in first, and then this will come in after it. All right, so I'll go ahead and put those in. All right, well, the lower's all put together. Came together without really any difficulty. Probably the trickiest part was getting the trigger installed with a couple little set screws in there, but manageable. So now we just want to pair it up with the upper that we built the other day, and we'll see how the rifle comes out. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is install some attachment points for my sling. And this particular buttstock comes with these little cutouts, these little holes here that you can use these Grove Tech threaded inserts to put in here. And it's nice is there's one on each side, so you can put a threaded insert on each side, and then you can use these quick release push button swivels to just sort of click into it and have you a nice attachment point for a sling. If you want to move it to the other side, you could quickly do that as well. So it gives you a nice place to attach here. Of course, there's other ways to attach to the buttstock, but that's just a real simple way to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in first, and then I'll figure out an attachment point for the front of the rifle as well. Okay, so I thought I'd go ahead and show how you install the Grove Tech swivel. There's a little threaded insert, there's a little tool that comes with it that just fits down into the insert, and then there's of course the swivel itself. So what you're going to do, the process is to take it and get it started by hand tight first. And what you want to do is you want to keep it, it's difficult to do to keep it level, but you want to keep it level. There's little lines in here that you're going to be essentially cutting into, and so you want to start it as level as you can so that when it finishes, you know, it's sitting flush. And you get it started by hand, and again, you're just kind of looking at it from different angles to see how it looks. And then you're going to go ahead and take this and the tool, and you're going to insert it here into it, and then you're going to use a 1/4 inch socket to go ahead and drive it in here. And you want, again, you want to keep it level, so you want to sort of keep a downward pressure on it. All right, it gets more and more difficult, of course, as you screw it in. And so take the tool back out, and there you go. And you got a really nice attachment point for one of these swivels. Here. It does a great job. You can rotate it around. And it's just a really convenient place to mount it to your stock. Again, I know there's lots of other ways you can wrap the stock and so forth, but it's just a nice way of doing it. If you don't want to use the swivel, it's no big deal. You just take it back out. It really hasn't affected your stock. I'm going to put one on both sides so that I have the ability to move the sling to either side of the rifle. So for the sling, I picked the Blue Force Gear padded Vickers sling in black. It's got a lot of good reviews. I haven't used one of these before, but everybody seems to really like them. So I went ahead and got one. So I'll go ahead and attach it onto the rifle here and we'll see how it looks. Okay, so I've gone ahead and attached the sling at these 2 points. This Blue Force Gear sling seems great. It has the little slider at the front so you can snug it up or loosen it real easy. I've got another sling like that does that, and I really like that feature. It's got a nice secure mounting to it. Slings feels like good quality, like it would last a good long time. So I can see why people like it. Simple, easy to use. I do want to share one thing I learned with these quick disconnect points. When you put in these Grove Tech mounts in these little cups here, when I first attached the sling to it, I was able to pull the sling back off and it just popped right back out. And I was really troubled by that. And what happened was when you put in these little inserts, if you put them in too far, apparently the plastic of the buttstock actually starts to interfere with the connection and you don't get a good latch. It feels like it's good and latched, but if you jerk hard on it, it'll pop it right back out. And I almost dropped the rifle actually because of that. So I went back and loosened them about a quarter turn on each side, and that fixed the issue. Both of them now hold it securely. Once you latch in, you can't pull it back out, which of course you don't want to be able to just pull it back out and knock your rifle out of your hand. So anyway, that's something to pay attention to if you're going to use this MBA1 stock. They tell you to put these in all the way until they hit the bottom, but I think you actually want to stop a little before that, where you can feel the metal all the way around here, and then that way you know you get a good contact when you put in this quick release portion. Okay, so anyway, just a little lesson learned. Fortunately, I didn't drop the rifle, but just want to share that with everybody. Okay, so the rifle's finished. I went ahead and put on the optic. It's an Aimpoint H-2. I haven't had an Aimpoint before, but boy, this thing is built like a little tank. It is extremely rugged feeling. It's got a super easy to use intensity knob, batteries that last essentially forever, protective covers for the lenses, just absolutely fantastic looking product. Can't wait to get it out and really try it. I got one that has the little standoff with the Picatinny rail attachment already as part of the package, but there's a number of different mounts you can get for it. So the rifle's finished. I'll walk you from tail to tip here. I've got the Zuth-AR MBA1 buttstock, just a very comfortable, easy to use buttstock. It's just one I really like. Very adjustable as well. It comes with the built-in cups where you can do sling attach points, which I like those. Inside here is the JP Enterprises Silent Capture Spring. Talked about that a little bit. The Zev Technologies receiver set, just absolutely gorgeous. I'm very glad I got that. Did the Strike Industries lower parts kit. Didn't have any issues with fit at all. I've read other people have had some issues sometimes. Everything fit perfectly. Got the Radian Raptor LT charging handle. Ultimate dust cover. Inside here I've got the ToolCraft nickel boron bolt carrier group. Just beautifully machined piece. Very smooth and just very precise tolerance, you can tell. The Timney Competition 4.5 pound trigger. They have a number of different models. This is the 4.5 is one I opted for. The Timney triggers are just fantastic. I can tell you this thing is just extremely well made. Very tight in here. Couldn't ask for anything better. The only thing about it is you have to take your time installing it. You know, people have a little frustration sometimes trying to get in those set screws. I managed to do it. I put in the trigger, took out the trigger, and put in the trigger again, and it wasn't that challenging. So my advice is just take your time, read a couple of, maybe watch a couple of videos about tips and tricks about doing that. So the Timney trigger, really nice. Got the Aero Precision Atlas S1 handguard. Really beautiful handguard, like I say, extremely comfortable. I put these ERGO rubber rail covers on it just to make it even that much better. The only issue I had with the handguard was it wasn't really compatible with this Zev receiver, the upper receiver. And I had to do a little machining to take a little notch out to get them to fit snug together. You know, if I had known that ahead of time, maybe I'd have gotten a different handguard, but now that I've done this one, it's gorgeous. I wouldn't change it. It's very, very nice, and it fits me perfectly. Everybody has a different preference on handguards, but I really like that one. And then, of course, there's the Ballistic Advantage Hanson barrel. This is a 14.5 inch in their Premium Black series. I can't say enough good things about Ballistic Advantage and Hanson's barrels. They're just really, really wonderfully made barrels. And then finally, this VG6 Precision flash hider compensator on the end. So to me, you know, it's a great build. I can't wait to take this out and shoot it. I certainly welcome your feedback. Maybe you've got some ideas of things that I could have done differently, or you know, you can make some suggestions in terms of maybe other products that could have been swapped out for these that would have done a little better in this build. I don't know. I'm open to suggestions. All I ask is that, you know, please be polite. I try and be polite when I post to people. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the build. It was certainly fun for me. It was my first AR15 build, and I learned a lot, and I also just had fun doing it. So maybe I gave you an idea or two of something you could put on your AR15, or maybe I even motivated you to just start from scratch and build one on your own. So anyway, thanks a lot for taking the time to watch the video.